Good morning. My name is Gary Livingood from Mount Airy, Maryland, and it's Saturday, May 21st, 2016. I'm about to interview Mr. Jim Beckman at the Community Media Center in Westminster, Maryland. Mr. Beckman, may I have your full name and age, please?
Well, my full name is really James Bruce Beckman II, and I'm 71 years old right now.
Okay. I guess we'll start at the beginning. When were you born, sir?
I was born in Anaconda, Montana, way out west, on 24 December 1944, just as a Christmas present to my mom.
And your mom and dad's names?
My mother's name was Anna Elizabeth, commonly known as Annabeth Beckman, or Glosser, maiden name. My dad's name was James Bruce Beckman, and he was the first, I guess, is what you would say.
Have any brothers and sisters?
I have three brothers. The one just younger is Jack Beckman. He lives in Great Falls, Montana. I got Joel Beckman, who lives in San Diego, and Jay Beckman, who also lives in San Diego. All four would.
Did any of them serve in military service?
The one just younger than me, Jack, he served in the Navy during Vietnam also.
Okay. And obviously you served in the United States Navy, as evidenced by the embroidery on your shirt.
Thank you.
And did you enlist or were you drafted?
Probably somewhere around my sophomore year in high school, I got the wild idea that I was getting out of this mountainous, cold-ass region, and decided that the Navy would be a good prospect, and I started doing reading, and I really wanted to be a submarine person. That was my whole goal in life, was to get to be a submarine person. Well, that kind of got shot down when I went to recruiters because I was colorblind. Colorblind people couldn't get into the electronics fields or other fields, and it was a thing that the Navy says, yeah, we can't have you on submarines either. No, their idea is kind of dumb, but that's the way it was and the way it still is, I think. But so after I graduated, I was working around, and I was working as a helper at Sears just before Christmas, and the guy that I was working with was joining the Navy, and we went out to lunch, and he says, I got to stop in and see the recruiter. And I said, okay, and stopped in, and a week later, I was being enlisted. So 26th of December, right after Christmas in 1963, I joined the Navy.
Okay. And where did you take your basic?
Great Lakes, Illinois, and along with that, you'd think coming out of Montana that you wouldn't notice anything. Well, Great Lakes, Illinois Training Center happens to be one of them places that get what they call lake effect snow. Mm-hmm. So as we got there, we had a bunch of snow, and snow shovels were handy for anybody just reporting to the recruit training command. So there was some shoveling of snow and stuff, and then a rather cold introduction to the Navy.
How was your experience in adapting to military life?
Really pretty easy for myself. I guess because I had a fairly decent education and stuff that I come along. I was made one of the company recruit first class, which there's a recruit commander and then two first class commanders, which are for the platoons, and I was one of those, so I had a pretty boot camp relaxed type situation because I was in charge of, I guess, I forget, for sure 25 to 40 men, I don't know, underneath there that in the platoons and stuff, and other than the marching and stuff, things like that, and getting things squared away, it was a pretty direct and pretty easy overall time for me.
How was barracks life at that point in time?
Actually, Great Lakes Barracks at that time was really good because it was a time, uh, I guess, right after they'd done a bunch of new construction because our barracks was almost brand new. Now, as a lot of people in my time frame probably or just before can remember, most of the barracks and other classrooms and the stuff around were of the World War II prefab that had been there for 35, 40 years, and here we're sitting in this brand new, sparkly clean uh, place, and the only bad part about it was the company commander believed that we should keep it sparkling clean and clear. So there was plenty of time to learn how to scrub and buff floors and wipe down surfaces and such as that.
Well, historically, the Navy has always been touted as providing quality chow. Did you find that experience to be true?
Oh yeah, I had no trouble at all with the food that they served, and you know they keep you active enough that you're hungry enough, and you know, I was a plain old farm boy that says, okay, food is good, and I had been raised that, you know, you eat what's served, so there wasn't a whole lot of argument about the fact that, yep, this is good food.
After your basic training, did the Navy provide like specialized AIT training?
Yes, actually, in boot camp you go through a classification type situation, and as I had went in just separately as a non-designated person, I got to select the field that I was going into and had picked wanting to go into machinist mate school because at the time I thought it was going to be working with lathes and building things of this nature here, and find out later on that it was a different type of machinist type work, but was selected there to go to A school. I had been designated to go to an A school on recruitment, but had not had one designated. So I went to machinist mate A school directly out of boot camp.
And what type of machinist activity did you?
Okay, machinist mates are the ones that run the engine room. They run the turbines, the generators, the pumps, the valves, the flushing water, all the auxiliaries of that nature, air compressors. Basically, we'll tell people that, you know, you want to go somewhere, we take you. If you want to come back, we'll bring you back. But in between times, we just sit down there and try and be not noticeable, because being noticeable is not good. Captain don't like the not making turns on the shaft, so being noticeable is bad.
Well, after your specialized training, where were you deployed?
Well, actually, I went to A school and met this fine senior chief, I believe he was, that says, you know, you've got a pretty good education background behind you. Did you ever consider nuclear power? I thought, didn't consider anything, but what are you talking about? And he says, you know, for just a 2-year more obligation, we can get you into the nuclear power program. Well, being the dumbass person that I was and having nothing better to do for the next few years, I says, okay, and was then sent to Vallejo, California for basic nuclear power school, followed by a tour at Idaho Falls reactor site for advanced training in nuclear power. And that's a full year course in itself, and graduated from there and was then assigned to my first ship, the USS Bainbridge out of South Carolina.
And what were your duties on the Bainbridge?
Well, most of my duties on the Bainbridge were kind of interesting too, because initially nuclear power was still a fairly new concept in the Navy. It's only, I think, 8 years old, something of that nature there, that really coming along, and it was very top oriented as far as the rank structure. When I went aboard the ship, there was 9 E9 people, pay grade wise, in M Division itself, and then that petered down to where there was only 5 of us in the whole 70-person M division that were third class. So we were prized. Good. I'm an E9 and I want him to work for me. And as such, we became very useful at whatever had to be done that wasn't dignified for anybody else, I guess it was. A lot of painting, a lot of brass polishing, a lot of scrubbing, a lot of cleaning. But on the other hand, with that many senior people, there was a slew of talent. So it just rubs off on you if you're interested at all in what your job is. And I loved being a machinist mate. Even then I started off liking the type of work, and was moving up and advancing as time quickly went on. And the structure changed very quickly to where we had the normal one master chief in M division and some structure pyramided on down and stuff. By the time I left 4 years later, it had pretty well spread itself out. But it was a very good tour of duty the very first time.
Were you on the Bainbridge all the time, or did you serve on other ships?
Oh, I did 26 years, so yes,
okay.
there was a lot of other times. The Bainbridge, when I actually was kind of an interesting sidebar here, when I went on was home ported out of San Diego. And when we left San Diego following the Enterprise, we went around Africa, which meant crossing the equator and going through the shellback initiation and stuff, and which only somebody that's been there can imagine what it was like, and or can tell you what it was like. And went around there and went to Vietnam as the first nuclear task force to sail through the waters of Vietnam for the Vietnam War in '65 by then, and then home ported in Long Beach, California as part of the change. So my first real cruise sailed me around the world. I had started in Vallejo, California in school, and ended up in Long Beach, California on the ship after having crossed the country and sailed around the world. So it was an adventuresome start with several unique port calls. Even though I was just starting on the adventure, it was a different time.
And while in Nam, what type of service did the Bainbridge, or no, I don't know what ship you were on
Well,
at
it
that
was
point.
it was the
was
Bainbridge
still
at the time. The
Bainbridge.
first one was there. You know, I did 5 different deployments to over several years to the coast of Vietnam, and mainly we were plane guard support and carrier protection for the carriers that we were with. Nuclear power, we often were one of the guard ships for the Enterprise itself, and I'm not sure with the Bainbridge what other duties the ship actually supplied, mainly because I was an engineer and junior, and that meant you get up, you go to work in the engine room, you get off, you go to sleep, you get up and go to work in the engine room, and going outside was a real privilege, and you just didn't know where or what the ship's schedule was because I wasn't senior enough to be involved with it. And
Now, did the Bainbridge see any action while in Nam?
nothing directly, just that I know of for sure.
While you were in the service, what lines of communication did you have with family and friends?
Slim to none. When you're at that time at sea, and it's being with the modern everything going on, electronics and stuff, you could write a letter, and if you asked a question, you could expect maybe an answer in 2 weeks if things went really well, and up to 4 weeks if things were slow, because your mail had to go through your distribution there, and then it went off by helo to the carrier, and then from the carrier on what they call cod planes to the air bases at Vietnam, and from the air bases then it was sent back to the States. So it took a journey on its own self just to get a letter from one place to the other, and then you had to go through the normal mail process, which at that time wasn't any faster or slower than it is today, but it's still a slow mail type situation. So you hope that you got letters back that meant something shortly. Now, as far as getting mail, we got mail probably every 3 to 5 days. We had a mail delivery come in from the helicopter. We working right directly with the carrier most of the time. We had pretty good mail service and stuff, but again, the time delay from when you sent a letter off to when you got an answer was upwards to 2 weeks to a month. So,
Well, during the period of time that you're aboard ship, is there any time for rest and relaxation other than sleep or recreation?
not a whole lot. And two things that kind of affect that is when you're starting off aboard ship as a junior person, you've got not only your watch standing, which normally was a 4 and 8 type situation, meaning 4 hours of watch, 8 hours off, but then you had, during the day, you had a full work day also to accomplish. So if you weren't on watch, you had between 4 and 8 hours of work day. So you could start off your day at 4 in the morning and end up at 8 o'clock at night, and then start again at 4 o'clock the next morning. So there wasn't a whole lot of time that you weren't deciding that sleep was good. And then being in the nuclear power program, they threw this extra burden on you that you have, each watch station is required certain qualifications. And this is not done during your work time, some during your watch time, a lot during your off time. So then the whole thing with the Navy and stuff is, or probably any service, but it doesn't really care that you feel tired or not really wanting to do this or lack of interest. If you've got qualifications that need done, that's what you get done. And if not, then somebody's standing there tapping you on the shoulder saying, it would be a really good idea if you get your butt in gear and start taking care of the issues that you know you're supposed to be doing. So spending time doing anything else. The one luxury you do have is reading is pretty popular. The ship's library, which is very, very small on a cruiser, but you know, taking books and stuff. I did a tremendous amount of reading. I always was really like reading. So,
Well, you mentioned qualifications, and how would you categorize the type of skill training that you received, either at, well, particularly your advanced?
as a very junior person, very job oriented. It's very direct about exactly what you're doing, and being, you know, as a watchstander, this is what actions happen, this is what you're going to do and what you're going to take. As time goes on, your training level moves up as you become more qualified. You know, you qualify on all the junior watch stations, then you pick up your intermediate seniority watch stations, then you pick up your more senior stations, and eventually you can work right at the top level. But in 26 years in the Navy, I think I spent maybe 3 years fully qualified. You are constantly going through some kind of qualification to move up, move on, and or in the nuclear power program, you're also going through a requalification program each time. Every time you change a ship or station, you start off basically at the bottom and work up again. Now, if you're going from one ship to a duty station where there's a nuclear plant or whatever, you start off at the bottom, but the initial training at the bottom then, since you were qualified, is very quick. But then you move into the next level, and you're suddenly, the demands of that knowledge at that level have increased. My end goal or end up final qualification was I was one of two at the time enlisted qualified underway engineering officers of the watch. Now that program has expanded some and there's more available, but it took a lot of time and qualification, and it's a qualification that is normally held only by commissioned officers. And so you have to work up considerable amount of time to break the barrier and get involved in it and qualified in it, along with all your other qualification. Then nuclear power requires a minimal of 4 hours of training per week per everybody in the engineering department. And this falls into the situation that if you have 100 people, you have 400 hours of training to complete. If 25 of those people are gone for leave, liberty, whatever, are not available, then you have to make up those hours in the department. So each person probably does between 5 and 6 hours of direct training, and it's all logged and everything in each week. So you're constantly undergoing upgrading training and in-rate training, whichever is happening at the time. And then it's an intense program, nuclear power. You're constantly going through drills, you're constantly going through tests, you're constantly going through recertification for the group. Every year you have an off board comes in. Naval Reactors was the first one. Now it's a different name, but they would come in and give an examination. If the ship's engineering department overall did not pass that examination, you were sent to a port, and usually the examination was done when you were near a home port. You were put in port and went through a massive upgrading program. Quite commonly, the engineer and the CO were relieved because of the failure. There was no friendly group with the Naval Reactor Group. It was either pass or fail, and so the commanding officers, engineers, and on down were very dedicated to the training process early on. So you know, it wasn't something that was taken lightly as far as this will get documented, but we don't care whether you learn. It was, you will learn because my career depends on it.
Well, earlier you had mentioned liberty. How often did you get liberty?
Depending on where you were and what you were doing. Now, when we were deployed to, and most of my early deployments were into Westpac with the first two ships, and you'd pull online duty with the carrier of probably 20, 25 days, and then 5 to 6 days in port someplace. Sometimes many times in Subic Bay in the Philippines, Manila, Singapore, a trip down to Australia, maybe a port call in Hong Kong or Japan during that cruise time. Most of the time I would say better than 50% of the time we're into the Subic Bay area, because you had a massive repair facility there that the ship could go under repairs and stuff, where if you went to Australia, you were into a political good time and a lot more sightseeing type things.
Of course, when you served off the coast of Vietnam, I assume there were no liberty ports, or
Oh
were
no!
there?
When you were at sea off the coast of Vietnam, you were underway, haze gray, and we did two things actually. The first cruises that I said I made that I didn't know too much. Now as I got more senior and stuff in the Navy and stuff, I got more time to experience what the ships and stuff did. We did what was called plane guarding with the carrier, where while the carrier was launching or recovering planes, you're stationed 1,000 yards after it. So if the plane misses the carrier, you pick up the remains. And that was a common thing, would to be plane guard. Then your independent steaming time was called SAR, which was Sea, Air, and Rescue, and you would be stationed several hundred miles north, close to the North Vietnam coast in the northern area. And this was where, when the planes went in, if you watch the movies and stuff and they talk about coming back and getting feet wet when they come across the coast, getting that water line was a big deal for them, because then there was rescue ships. Now, we carried a helicopter that if a pilot went down, you could send off the helicopter to pick them up. They also could pick them up in country, but mostly for us it was sea rescue, and we did several different times of pilots that had to ditch in the ocean and stuff. And if you're a flyer, I guess landing in the water is not a friendly situation. So,
Well, that would be true. When were you discharged, sir?
I actually retired after 26 years in 1990, January 1990. So,
And your rank at the time?
I was a Master Chief Machinist Mate, E9, which is the highest enlisted rate you can obtain.
And where did you get discharged from?
I was retired from ComNav Surflant, which is Commander Naval Surface Force Atlantic, on staff duty in Norfolk, Virginia. Trying to move the cities around a little bit, my own geographical location.
How did you get home? From Norfolk?
Well, actually, I didn't get home. I, was from Montana when I joined, and ended up in Columbia, Maryland after I retired, because somebody offered me a job. And I says, okay, this sounds good. Employment is not a bad deal. I think I will move into this. And
now, is this the type of job for which the Navy had provided you the training?
In a lot of ways. I became an industrial maintenance procedure writer. The company I worked for at the time, we wrote industrial maintenance procedures for power plant companies and things of this nature here, on how to fix their different parts of their equipment and how to do things and stuff, and upgrade what a tech manual would do to what the person on the floor could really use.
Okay. So you retired then while Vietnam was still going on?
No.
No?
No. Vietnam ended up about 1980.
Oh, 7
So it was
right.
at least another 10 years after that.
That's true. That's true. And how were you received when you returned home?
Actually, you hear a lot about the hate and discontent and everything, and it's kind of a situation in my part, because like I said, I did 5 different deployments, 3 different ships that actually deployed to the war zones and stuff, and I never had any problems. Now, we were in Long Beach, and Long Beach area was really a major naval area and stuff, so there was a lot of acceptance of the military, I would say. Now, not too far north of us was up around San Francisco in the Bay Area, where you had the Berkeley University and all the stuff there. So we saw all this problem on TV, and we knew about it, and we were cautioned about it to stay away from the politic part of it. We did a lot of things that you had at the time, what were called locker clubs, right off of the base. And you would leave, you always had to leave in uniform. Leave, go out the base, catch a ride into town for a few blocks, and stop in at the locker club and change into civilian clothes. And then on your way back in the evening or night, you'd change back into uniform to report back to the ship. So technically, you were supposed to look more like one of the civilian people there, but anybody that's been around a military area, and especially in that era where if you were a civilian, long hair and bearded wonders were common for the civilian side, and short hair and close chopped, was a military style. You could pick, yep, this is a sailor, this is not, really easily out of a group. So it wasn't you were hidden, you were just less obvious.
Well, while your time in service, did you make any close personal friends that you were able to keep contact with?
Well, two things happened because of my service. One, after my first ship, I was stationed at the nuclear prototype in Idaho Falls as a staff instructor for the nuclear power program, and I met my wife there and got married. So that comes pretty close to a major accomplishment, I guess. And we've been together for 46 years now, 47 years, and so I can say, yep, that's good. But through the benefits now, I guess, more of the different social medias, and then just some of the other ways, even for long periods of time, I have some pretty close friends that different times that I was stationed with them, either like at the prototype where you get family groups because you're uniquely different from the other civilian population, and it's kind of a thing that, you know, you're in the military and you associate more with the other military families and stuff because you have certain things, and your wives and stuff have more relationship back and forth because they know, yep, my husband's deployed. And a lot of times with the nuclear program at the prototypes and stuff, you're dealing with not only the people off the carriers and the cruisers, but also off the submarines, because you get a real mix when you're in the training process. So a lot of these families and stuff have had people that not only deployed to war zones, but on the other hand, the submarine people that their husbands and stuff deployed for, 90 days to 100 days, some whatever, without any communication at all. They waved them at the pier and they saw them when they came back, and that was the communication. So there's a lot of camaraderie between family and family members, not only with the military people. So,
Are there any reunions?
none that I've ever attended. There have been some, but I have not hit any.
Okay. Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am a member of the American Legion in Westminster here, and I am the current adjutant for the post, which is an administration officer basically, and handle the membership applications and all of that stuff that comes through. And then as a more unique situation, I'm also the Grand Chef of Maryland for the 40 and 8, which is a veterans organization in Maryland, or a national veterans organization also. I'm the Grand Chef makes me the commander of the Maryland section of it. So,
Okay. How has your military experiences impacted your life?
well, a couple things. One, the direct military experience and stuff with becoming a qualified nuclear person. I also got to be a qualified, as time went on, junior officer of the deck, which is the one that gives the direction for where the ship's heading as you cross through the water, and the speed and stuff. The officer of the deck actually has full control of the ship, but the junior officer of the deck does the maneuvering and stuff. I got qualified to do that, which is a really unique experience as an engineer. And then was able, as I got out and stuff, to apply not so much the nuclear field, but the type of background. I was in the training process there, and then after that I went into a company that made plastic bottles, but I was an auxiliary supervisor, auxiliaries manager there, and worked on overhauling and maintaining the equipment in that facility versus a lot of other things. And I stayed out of the nuclear program pretty well on my own choice, because the nuclear program is super demanding, not only with the training, but with the need to be 100% right when you make a decision. As you And as I got very senior in the program, you get to understand that what you say and do, people's lives depend on. You know, when you're running a nuclear power plant and your statement is law, you say, this is what I want done now. That's what happens now. And if it's right, everything's good. If it's wrong, things can be really bad. And things can be really, really bad if you aren't well trained and don't pay attention. And it is a lot of pressure over a long period of time to maintain that level of desire, or was for me. So I says, when I got out of the Navy, I says, I'm going to kind of lean away from the nuclear program if something else gets offered to me, and it did, and that's where I went. But
What type of message would you like to leave for, let's say, future generations who view this interview?
Well, being a member of both the 48 and the Legion and such, I guess the political side, if you would call it that, or the pronouncement side comes up, is that it is very, very important that the country supports the veterans that they have and the needs of the veterans and continue to support them. It's also even more critical that the country maintains a strong military presence and understands the need for it. Not necessarily to be involved with fighting, because I would guarantee you there's not a military person that wants to be at war. That is not a thing that a military person ever wants to be, because their life is on the line. The whole idea of the strong military is to prevent that situation, not to be part of that situation.
Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to discuss?
I think we've pretty well covered a lot of area and stuff. I think anybody watching this and stuff probably right now deciding, won't he just please shut up?
Well, I certainly appreciate the discussion today, and I certainly do appreciate your service, sir.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and the Media Center for interviewing and following up on this, and along with the other veterans they're interviewing and stuff, that the history is maintained for a lot of generations.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your service.